In a working-class neighborhood of Chicago during a cold March evening in 2024, an event occurred that would challenge everything we think we know about faith, forgiveness, and the mysterious ways divine grace operates in our modern world. An imam, driven by grief and spiritual crisis after losing his last remaining family member, committed an act that should have sparked religious outrage and interfaith conflict. Instead, what followed became one of the most extraordinary testimonies of healing and unity documented in recent American religious history. This real story, preserved through eyewitness accounts and verified by community leaders from multiple faith traditions, reminds us that sometimes our darkest moments become the catalyst for miracles we never could have imagined. Share this story to inspire others who may be walking through their own spiritual wilderness. In a nation increasingly divided by religious and cultural differences, what happened in Chicago proves that grace operates beyond the boundaries of our understanding, transforming hearts in ways that defy all human logic. Ahmad Hassan al-Rashid had arrived in Chicago 8 years earlier as a Syrian refugee, carrying nothing but a worn suitcase, heartbreaking memories of Aleppo before the war, and theological training that had prepared him for ministry but not for the unique challenges of leading Muslims in America. At 52 years old, Ahmad served as imam for the Islamic Center of Southside Chicago, a converted warehouse in Englewood that housed a growing community of immigrants, converts, and second-generation Muslim Americans seeking authentic spiritual guidance in a country where their faith was often misunderstood or feared. His path to religious leadership had been forged through personal tragedy. Ahmad had lost his wife, 2 sons, and parents during the Syrian conflict, bombed buildings that erased decades of family life in minutes. His survival seemed random, almost cruel. Why had Allah spared him while taking everyone he loved? Sometimes I wonder if I was saved to serve, or if I was condemned to remember, Ahmad often confided to his closest friend, Dr. Yusuf Malik, a Pakistani-American physician who had sponsored Ahmad's initial resettlement in Illinois. The Islamic Center operated on a shoestring budget, sustained by donations from working-class families who gave what they could spare. Ahmad taught Arabic to children, conducted marriages and funerals, provided counseling for families struggling with integration challenges, and served as unofficial liaison between the Muslim community and local government officials who rarely understood Islamic customs. But his most challenging role was helping fellow refugees process trauma while maintaining faith in a benevolent creator. How do you counsel a mother whose son was recruited by extremists? How do you comfort a father whose business was destroyed by bigotry? How do you preach about divine mercy when innocent people suffer daily? Ahmad's own spiritual struggles intensified during the winter of 2024. His last surviving relative, his niece Fatima, who had been like a daughter to him, was critically ill in a Turkish refugee camp. The tuberculosis that was slowly killing her required medical treatment that cost more than Ahmad could earn in 2 years of ministry. Every night, he prayed the same desperate prayer. Allah, I have served you faithfully despite losing everything. Please save this one precious life. She is all I have left of my brother, of my family, of my past. Don't let her die alone in a tent, forgotten by the world. The phone call came on March 15th, 3:47 a.m. Chicago time. Fatima had died during the night, unable to afford the antibiotics that could have saved her life. She was 19 years old. Ahmad's grief morphed into something more dangerous: anger at God. For the first time since beginning his religious training 30 years earlier, he questioned not just Allah's plan, but Allah's existence. If God was merciful, why did the innocent suffer while the corrupt prospered? If Allah was just, why did refugees die in camps while millionaires lived in mansions? I cannot preach about a loving God to families who have lost everything, Ahmad told Dr. Malik during a late-night conversation. How can I comfort others when I cannot comfort myself? My faith is broken, Yusuf. I feel like a fraud every time I lead prayers. What Ahmad didn't know was that his crisis of faith was about to collide with an act of compassion that would transform not only his life, but the lives of hundreds of people he had never met. But Allah works in mysterious ways, often through the most unlikely messengers. The morning after receiving news of Fatima's death, Ahmad struggled through his regular duties at the Islamic Center with a heart that felt completely empty. Leading dawn prayers felt like performing a play where he no longer believed his lines. Teaching Quran to eager young students felt like spreading beautiful lies. By afternoon, Ahmad could no longer maintain the facade of faithful leadership. He canceled evening prayers, telling the community he was suffering from illness, which was technically true, though the sickness was spiritual rather than physical. Walking aimlessly through his Englewood neighborhood, Ahmad found himself questioning everything he had taught for decades. Was religion simply human imagination used to cope with life's brutality? Were prayers just words spoken into empty air? Had he wasted his life serving a God who either didn't exist or didn't care? The March wind was brutal, cutting through his winter coat as he wandered streets lined with small businesses, modest homes, and occasional vacant lots that spoke of urban decay and renewal existing side by side. It was in front of Martinez Grocery, a family-owned store run by Mexican immigrants, that Ahmad's world shifted forever. Someone had apparently dropped a small religious statue while loading groceries. The figure, maybe 6 inches tall, showed a woman in blue and white robes with hands clasped in prayer. Even in his spiritual crisis, Ahmad recognized the imagery. This was how Christians depicted the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus, or Isa, as Muslims called him. For 8 years in Chicago, Ahmad had worked carefully to build bridges with Christian neighbors. He had participated in interfaith dialogues, shared Ramadan meals with Catholic and Protestant leaders, and always shown respect for Christian symbols and traditions, even when he disagreed theologically. But on this day, something snapped inside him. Where was your son when Fatima needed healing? Ahmad found himself speaking aloud to the statue, his words sharp with accumulated grief and anger. Christians pray to you, Muslims honor your purity, and you let innocent children die while comfortable people live in luxury. The rational part of his mind knew he was displacing rage that belonged elsewhere, at war, poverty, inadequate healthcare systems, and the random cruelty of disease. But rationality had abandoned him. Pain demanded a target. Without conscious decision, Ahmad picked up the statue and walked toward the dumpster behind Martinez Grocery. In a moment that would haunt and ultimately transform him, he threw the small figure among the garbage bags and food scraps. The act felt simultaneously satisfying and horrifying. For 30 seconds, he experienced the dark relief of lashing out at the divine powers that had failed him. Then came immediate shame that nearly doubled him over with regret. "What have I done?" he whispered, staring at the dumpster. "I am supposed to be a man of God, not a destroyer of sacred things." Ahmad considered retrieving the statue, cleaning it, and returning it to Martinez Grocery with an apology. But customers were arriving, and he couldn't bring himself to explain his actions to strangers who might not understand the grief behind his behavior. Walking home through increasingly cold wind, Ahmad felt he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He had violated his own principles of respect and tolerance. Worse, he had acted like the extremists he regularly condemned, destroying religious symbols of other faiths. That night, Ahmad called Dr. Malik and confessed what he had done. "Brother," Yusuf responded with gentle wisdom, "grief makes us do things we would never do in clear mind. The question now is not why you threw away a statue, but what you will do with the pain that caused such action." "I don't know if I can continue as Imam," Ahmad replied honestly. "How can I lead people in faith when my own faith is shattered? How can I preach about Allah's mercy when I feel so abandoned?" "Perhaps," Yusuf suggested, "Allah is preparing you for ministry you could never have imagined. Sometimes we must lose our certainties before we can find deeper truths." But Ahmad was far from ready to accept such optimism. That night, he decided to resign his position and find secular work that wouldn't require him to speak about a God he was no longer sure he believed in. What Ahmad didn't know was that his act of destruction had been witnessed, and that witness would respond in a way that would challenge everything he thought he knew about faith, forgiveness, and the mysterious connections between different religious traditions. But divine providence was already moving through the most unlikely channel. Maria Elena Vasquez had lived in Englewood for 23 years, arriving from Michoacán, Mexico, as a young mother seeking better opportunities for her children. Now 67 years old, she managed Martinez Grocery with her son Carlos while serving as unofficial neighborhood grandmother to families from a dozen different countries. Her small apartment above the store was filled with religious imagery that told the story of a lifetime of devotion. Our Lady of Guadalupe, Sacred Heart of Jesus, St. Jude for impossible causes, and St. Joseph for workers. But her faith wasn't merely decorative. It was active, practical, lived out in daily service to neighbors regardless of their backgrounds or beliefs. Maria Elena had learned English through night classes, Spanish-language telenovelas, and countless conversations with customers who became friends. She had mastered the delicate art of offering help without causing offense, providing groceries on credit during tough months, and listening to problems without judgment. Her relationship with the local Muslim community had developed gradually over 8 years. She had observed Ahmad walking past her store during his daily routines, had sold him groceries with patient smiles despite language barriers, and had gradually learned to stock halal products that met Islamic dietary requirements. People are people, Maria Elena often told her more suspicious neighbors. They want to work, raise their children, and honor God. The way they pray doesn't change the goodness in their hearts. On that cold March afternoon, Maria Elena was arranging produce display when she happened to look out the window and see Ahmad approach her dumpster carrying something small. Her first thought was gratitude. Many neighbors used her dumpster without permission, but Ahmad had always been respectful about proper disposal. But when she saw what he threw away, her heart broke for reasons she couldn't immediately articulate. The small statue of the Virgin Mary had belonged to Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly customer who had dropped it while struggling with grocery bags. Maria Elena had planned to call Mrs. Rodriguez that evening to return the precious figure, knowing how much such religious items meant to people of her generation. But seeing Ahmad dispose of the statue didn't anger Maria Elena, it concerned her. In 23 years of observing human behavior, she had learned to recognize pain behind destructive actions. Ahmad's shoulders had slumped with defeat, not malice. His walk away from the dumpster showed regret, not satisfaction. "Something terrible has happened to that man," she told Carlos when he asked why she looked so troubled. "People don't throw away sacred things unless they are drowning in grief." That evening, after closing the store, Maria Elena retrieved the statue from the dumpster. She cleaned it carefully with warm water and gentle soap, dried it with soft towels, and placed it on her kitchen table while she prayed her rosary. "Virgencita," she addressed the figure using the affectionate diminutive common among Mexican Catholics, "this man is suffering. He has lost faith not because he is evil, but because he is broken. Show me how to help him." The answer came not as mystical revelation, but as practical insight born from decades of community service. Ahmad needed to experience grace, not judgment. He needed to see love in action, not hear words about love. He needed to be reminded that God works through human hands, especially when divine presence seems absent. Maria Elena had heard through neighborhood networks that Ahmad had been struggling since receiving bad news about family overseas. She had noticed him missing from his usual walking routines, had seen him looking increasingly haggard and isolated. "Carlos," she told her son, "tomorrow we will visit the Imam with this statue. Not to shame him, but to show him that even broken faith can be healed." "Mama," Carlos responded with concern, "what if he gets angry? What if he thinks we are trying to convert him? This could cause problems in the neighborhood." "Mijo," Maria Elena replied with the confidence of someone who had navigated interfaith relationships for decades, "kindness is never the wrong choice. If we approach him with respect and genuine care, God will open his heart to receive what he needs." That night, Maria Elena prepared for what she sensed would be one of the most important conversations of her life. She had no theological training, spoke only basic English, and had never attempted anything resembling formal interfaith outreach. But she had something more valuable, a heart that recognized pain and hands willing to serve. She also had deep faith in the Virgin Mary's ability to work miracles through the most ordinary circumstances. Virgencita, she prayed before sleep, if you want to use an old Mexican woman to heal a broken imam, I am ready. But you will need to give me the right words. The next morning would test whether faith could build bridges across religious, cultural, and linguistic barriers that seemed impossible to cross. But what happened next would surpass even Maria Elena's expectations. The next afternoon, Maria Elena closed her store early and walked the 4 blocks to the Islamic Center, carrying the clean statue wrapped carefully in a blue shawl that had belonged to her grandmother. She had never been inside a mosque, wasn't sure about proper etiquette, and felt nervous about approaching Ahmad when he might prefer solitude. But something stronger than nervousness drove her forward, a conviction that this moment was orchestrated by Providence. Ahmad was sweeping the entrance steps when he saw Maria Elena approaching. His first reaction was embarrassment, wondering if someone had seen him at the dumpster and reported the incident. His second reaction was curiosity about why this kind neighbor would visit the Islamic Center. "Mr. Ahmad," Maria Elena said in careful English, "I need to speak with you about something important." Ahmad set down his broom and gave her full attention, noting the wrapped bundle she carried with obvious care. "Mrs. Martinez, you are always welcome here. How can I help you?" Maria Elena unwrapped the statue slowly, watching Ahmad's face for reaction. When she saw recognition followed by shame, she knew her instincts had been correct. "I found this behind my store yesterday," she said gently. "I know you put it there." Ahmad's shoulders sagged with defeat. "Mrs. Martinez, I am deeply sorry. I was not thinking clearly. I meant no disrespect to you or your faith. I was..." He struggled for words in English adequate to explain his crisis. "You were hurting," Maria Elena finished simply. "People who are not hurting don't throw away sacred things." The compassion in her voice nearly broke Ahmad's composure entirely. For 30 seconds, neither spoke as he fought tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed. "I lost my last family member," Ahmad finally managed. "My niece in Turkey. She died because we couldn't afford medicine. I became angry at God, at all gods. I am ashamed of what I did." Maria Elena stepped closer, still holding the statue. "Mr. Ahmad, I lost my husband 5 years ago. Cancer. We prayed every day for healing. When he died, I was angry too. I said terrible things to God. I stopped going to Mass for months." Ahmad looked up, surprised to find understanding rather than condemnation. How did your faith return?" "Through kindness of others," Maria Elena replied. "People brought food when I couldn't cook. They prayed when I couldn't pray. They showed me God's love when I couldn't feel it myself." She extended the statue toward Ahmad. "This is not my statue. It belongs to Mrs. Rodriguez, old lady who dropped it. But before I return it to her, I want to give it to you." Ahmad stepped back, confused. "Mrs. Martinez, I cannot accept religious image from your faith. It would not be appropriate." "I don't want you to worship it," Maria Elena explained patiently. "I want you to keep it to remember something. When you threw it away, God sent someone to rescue it. When you felt abandoned, you were being watched over. When you acted from pain, you were met with forgiveness." The words hit Ahmad with force he hadn't expected. This simple woman was offering profound theological insight wrapped in practical kindness. "Why would you do this for me?" he asked. "I disrespected your sacred image. I am not even Christian." "Because," Maria Elena said with a smile that radiated maternal warmth, "we worship the same God, even if we pray different ways. Because your God is testing you, but he has not abandoned you. Because when faith is broken, it must be healed by love, not arguments." Ahmad accepted the statue with trembling hands, feeling its weight as more than mere plaster and paint. "What do I do with this?" he asked. "Keep it on your desk," Maria Elena suggested. Not to pray to, but to remember that even when you cannot feel God's presence, He is working through people who care about you. When you are ready to have faith again, you will know what to do. That evening, Ahmad placed the small statue on his desk in the Islamic Center office, next to his Quran and prayer beads. For the first time since receiving news of Fatima's death, he completed his evening prayers, not because his faith was restored, but because he had been reminded that faith can be carried by others when we are too weak to carry it ourselves. But this was only the beginning of a series of events that would transform not only Ahmad, but the entire neighborhood. What neither Ahmad nor Maria Elena could have anticipated was how word of their encounter would spread. News of Maria Elena's visit to the Islamic Center spread through Englewood's interconnected community networks with remarkable speed. Mrs. Rodriguez, learning that her statue had been found and was now serving a special purpose, decided to buy a replacement rather than reclaim the original. "If the Virgencita is helping heal someone's broken heart," she told Maria Elena, "then she is exactly where she needs to be." Dr. Yusuf Malik heard about the incident from Ahmad himself during their weekly dinner. As a Pakistani immigrant who had navigated American interfaith relations for 15 years, Yusuf recognized the profound significance of what had occurred. "Brother," he told Ahmad, "this woman has given you something more valuable than the statue itself. She has shown you that grace operates beyond the boundaries of formal religion." Word also reached Reverend James Washington of New Hope Baptist Church, located 6 blocks from the Islamic Center. Reverend Washington had been trying to establish better relationships with Englewood's growing Muslim community, but had struggled to find common ground that felt authentic rather than politically motivated. When he heard about Maria Elena's act of reconciliation, he saw an opportunity for genuine interfaith cooperation based on shared values rather than shared theology. "This is what Christian witness looks like," he told his congregation during Sunday service. "Not arguing about doctrine, but demonstrating love in action. Mrs. Martinez has shown us how to be neighbors." Rabbi Sarah Cohen from the Reform Synagogue in nearby Hyde Park heard the story through Chicago's Interfaith Clergy Network. As someone who had spent years building bridges between Jewish and Muslim communities, she was intrigued by how a Catholic grandmother had achieved what formal interfaith dialogues often struggled to accomplish. "Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected sources," Rabbi Cohen observed during her weekly study group. "Academic theologians debate differences while practical saints demonstrate unity." But the most significant response came from an unexpected direction: Englewood's youth. Jalal Hassan, Ahmad's 16-year-old nephew who lived with foster parents after arriving from Syria 2 years earlier, had been struggling with his own identity crisis. Born Muslim but attending American public schools, dating American girls, and listening to American music, Jalal felt caught between cultures in ways that created constant internal conflict. When he learned that his uncle had experienced crisis of faith, followed by reconciliation through Christian kindness, Jalal began asking questions he had never dared voice before. "Uncle Ahmad," he said during one of their weekly mentoring sessions, "how can we be good Muslims while also being good Americans? How do we honor our traditions while respecting other people's traditions?" Ahmad realized that his nephew's questions reflected struggles faced by many immigrant youth who needed models for navigating religious identity in pluralistic society. "Perhaps," Ahmad suggested, "being a good Muslim in America means being the kind of person who builds bridges rather than walls. Like Mrs. Martinez built a bridge to me." This conversation inspired Ahmad to propose something unprecedented: a joint community service project involving the Islamic Center, Martinez Grocery, New Hope Baptist Church, and whoever else wanted to participate. "We will clean the neighborhood together," Ahmad announced to his congregation. Muslims, Christians, people of no religion, working side by side to serve the community we all call home. The first joint service day, held on a Saturday in early April, attracted 47 volunteers from 6 different religious backgrounds plus several secular neighbors who simply wanted to help improve their area. Ahmad worked alongside Reverend Washington picking up litter. Maria Elena distributed sandwiches to volunteers while discussing child-rearing techniques with Muslim mothers. Rabbi Cohen found herself learning Arabic numbers from elderly Imam while teaching Hebrew blessings to curious Christian children. "This is what heaven looks like," observed Mrs. Rodriguez, watching children from different families play together while their parents collaborated on painting over graffiti. But the most meaningful moment came when Jalal approached Maria Elena to thank her for helping his uncle. "Mrs. Martinez," the teenager said with formal politeness, "my uncle says you saved his faith. That means you saved our family too." Maria Elena hugged the young man with the same maternal affection she showed her own grandchildren. "Mijo," she replied, "faith saves itself. I just reminded your uncle that God never stops loving us, even when we stop loving God." By sunset, 3 blocks of Englewood looked cleaner, but more importantly, dozens of neighbors looked at each other differently. Religious boundaries hadn't disappeared, but they had become bridges rather than barriers. But the most extraordinary development was yet to come. 3 months after that first joint service project, something remarkable was happening in Englewood. The informal alliance between the Islamic Center, Martinez Grocery, New Hope Baptist Church, and Temple Beth Shalom had evolved into a recognized non-profit organization called Neighbors United. Ahmad had been elected president, not because he was Imam, but because his experience of receiving grace across religious lines had prepared him to facilitate similar experiences for others. "When someone shows you kindness you don't deserve," Ahmad explained during a Chicago Tribune interview, "you understand grace in ways no textbook can teach." "Mrs. Martinez gave me more than forgiveness. She gave me a model for how to live faith." The small Virgin Mary statue remained on Ahmad's desk at the Islamic Center, where it had become conversation starter for visitors curious about interfaith relationships. Ahmad would tell its story as example of how divine love transcends human categories. "I do not pray to this statue," he would explain to confused Muslim visitors. "But I keep it to remember that Allah works through people of all faiths to heal broken hearts, including mine." Maria Elena had become something of a local celebrity, featured in Catholic magazines as model of practical evangelization. But she remained focused on daily service rather than recognition. "I am not special," she insisted to reporters. "I just did what any neighbor should do, showed kindness to someone who was hurting." The neighborhood transformation was measurable. Crime decreased as neighbors knew each other better. Property values increased as the area gained reputation for unusual harmony. Local businesses thrived as the story attracted positive attention from across Chicago. But the most significant change was in the children. Jalal Hassan had organized an informal youth group that met weekly to discuss questions of identity, faith, and belonging. The group included Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and secular teenagers who found common ground in shared struggles with family expectations, educational pressures, and cultural navigation. "We realized we have more in common than different," Jalal explained. "We all want to make our parents proud while also being true to ourselves. We all want to serve God and serve our community." The youth group's first major project was creating a neighborhood directory that included emergency contacts, business information, and cultural guides explaining different religious practices and holidays. When Mrs. Chen's grandmother died, Jalal recalled, she didn't know whether Muslims had specific customs for expressing condolences. Our directory helped her understand, and now she knows how to be a respectful neighbor. Ahmad's own spiritual journey had progressed from crisis through healing to deeper wisdom. His sermons at the Islamic Center now incorporated insights about finding God in unexpected places and people. "Allah tests us not to break us, but to prepare us for service we could never have imagined," became one of his favorite themes. "My broken faith became foundation for stronger faith that includes rather than excludes." Dr. Yusuf Malik observed the changes in his friend with wonder. "Ahmad, you have become better Imam through losing faith than you were when faith seemed easy," he noted. "Crisis revealed depths in you that comfort never could have developed." The story had attracted national attention, with CNN, NPR, and National Geographic all producing features about the miracle in Englewood. But for residents, the real miracle was daily. Neighbors helping neighbors across all the lines that usually divide people. The lasting impact would prove even more extraordinary. Today, nearly a year after Ahmad threw a Virgin Mary statue into a dumpster behind Martinez Grocery, Englewood has become a national model for interfaith cooperation and community building. Neighbors United has expanded to include 12 religious congregations, 2 secular community organizations, and more than 300 active volunteers. Their programs include tutoring for immigrant children, job placement services, conflict mediation, and emergency assistance for families in crisis. Ahmad continues serving as Imam at the Islamic Center, but his ministry now includes regular speaking engagements at churches, synagogues, and universities across the country. His message is simple. Faith becomes real when it is tested, and it becomes powerful when it reaches across differences to heal division. Maria Elena still manages Martinez Grocery, still welcomes customers with maternal warmth, and still insists she did nothing special. But her simple act of kindness has been documented as case study in theology schools, sociology departments, and conflict resolution programs. The Virgin Mary statue remains on Ahmad's desk, now accompanied by letters from visitors thanking him for demonstrating that sacred hospitality transcends religious boundaries. Every day I look at that statue, Ahmad reflects, I remember that my lowest moment became doorway to my highest purpose. When I thought God had abandoned me, He was actually preparing me to serve in ways I never could have imagined. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose dropped statue started the chain of events, has become regular volunteer at the Islamic Center's food pantry. The Virgencita knew where she needed to be, Mrs. Rodriguez insists with smile. She went exactly where God's love was needed most. The story of Ahmad and Maria Elena reminds us that our darkest moments often precede our greatest breakthroughs. When faith seems broken, love can carry us until healing comes. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who might need to hear that grace operates beyond all human logic and religious boundaries. Like this video if you believe that kindness can bridge any divide, and subscribe for more true stories that demonstrate the power of practical faith in action. Comment below about times when unexpected kindness changed your perspective on life or faith. In Englewood, Chicago, a small statue continues to remind everyone who sees it that divine love never stops working, even when we stop believing.